Challenger is put out an article saying basically the NCAA will be dead within 5 years, and we will start seeing this great split that people have been talking about from some of like the power conferences and some of those like lower level. I want to say group of five. I know it's not really group of five in basketball, but you get the gist of what I'm saying when I say that. So it's a bit of an interesting situation, and there's a lot of content to cover in this article. I don't know if I want to just like read it to you and it would be boring, but basically the gist of it is that the Maryland athletic director, Damon Evans, came and had a meeting with some other athletic directors and some other important people in the Maryland community and some more even further than that, and said basically that the power conferences will have revenue sharing for players within the next 5 years. He said, and I quote, "I do believe 5 years from now that we will be at a point where we are sharing revenue with student athletes." He went on later to say, "It would not surprise me to see some sort of different type of governance structure in place that separates the P5 from the current structure." So obviously he's kind of talking about football there, but later on in the article, he goes on to talk about all revenue producing sports, which would obviously include basketball. So obviously, since it's a basketball podcast, we're going to kind of focus more on basketball, but I'm sure both these guys will also touch on football as well. Like I said, I don't want to go through the entire article and read everything, but that's basically the gist of it. There's some more information about how like the March Madness could turn into like its own independent thing, kind of how like the college football playoffs are their own thing separate from the NCAA. So we might see something like that. But Russ, I want to go to you first. What were kind of your thoughts when you first read and heard about this information?
Yeah, so it's something that I think the writing it's been on the wall for a while now. That even with this recent stuff with Michigan, that's part of the question with the NCAA is how much are they going to do because they know that their days are kind of numbered. They know that there's these rumors with the power conferences becoming super conferences. How long will the NCAA really still be necessary? Because they've been outdated for a while, right? With the playoff system, with the revenue share, with the NIL stuff. Even high schools have done this, right? Like you have prep schools and high schools that are just about sports. They've said, hey, look, we're going to separate ourselves from, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, insert state athletic association. We're going to do our own private high school, play these other private high schools, and it's a premier product of guys that are going to go to the NBA or go to D1. And so it's only natural that the NCAA is eventually going to move to that. And the NIL is a great system. It's a great idea. But without revenue sharing, it wasn't going to last anyways because donors aren't going to keep opening up their pocketbooks for guys that might not pan out, for guys that might end up transferred after a year. And so revenue sharing is something that needs to happen because it rewards the guys that are actually in the building at the time that are doing the work in that specific season. And it's more of actual, salary-based, pay-for-play kind of based thing, but within parameters that we've always needed.
Yeah, and they went on to say too that like a lot of the athletic directors and stuff feel like the NIL system is already broken. There's already flaws in it. There's already things, and I think anybody who watches college athletics knows that it's not fully developed. And so what they're actually banking on is that this like thing, this like bill or whatever that's currently at Congress will make it so that the schools can actually bargain or the conferences can actually bargain with the players to give them money. But based on this bill by Congress, there would be an exemption that would no longer deem them to be employees, which is really strange. I don't know exactly how that works. Nick, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking of, JR, when you were talking about this, and I don't know if you guys recently saw this, but the state of Missouri, and this kind of hits home for University of Illinois. So the state of Missouri passed a law that basically allows any state school in Missouri to pay high school players NIL money if they commit to a state school. So to me, I mean, going back to the original point, right, JR, like we're in uncharted waters using the Java Men reference there. I mean, think about it. We're going to see an evolution, I think, in the next 5 years. I know that's what the article is getting at, but I'm not sure anyone really knows where this is going to land. I'm frankly terrified of Missouri now getting the upper hand. If you think about some of the top recruiting cities in the state of Missouri, that's battleground between University of Illinois and University of Missouri. Mm-hmm. And if you're a high school kid and you're getting some money offered to you as a junior in high school, I mean, that's a no-brainer to go to Missouri over U of I. So it almost sets off this arms race in a way where in order for University of Illinois or state schools to keep up, you almost have to pass this law just to get kids to stay local, get kids to commit to your school over the other. So I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting. I don't know. We talked about it with the transfer portal. It's like I said, it's uncharted waters. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that Missouri thing because it's important to realize that like the NCAA for a long, long time, what they have tried to do is they have tried to make everything equal and fair for all these schools,
right,
which we know is just not possible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, going back to what Russ said about Michigan, I know this is football, but it does pertain here. This whole like no in-person scouting rule, that was all done from the beginning, not because it's like immoral or wrong. It was done because Group of 5 schools wouldn't have the finances to be able to send people out to scout at different games because they would still have to buy tickets, they would still have to travel, do all of those things. So the NCAA has always been about, what is fair. And I think at this point now, it's like you've got the Big Ten who just got $1 billion, sports contract or TV contract, and you've got, the MAC who is I don't even know what their TV contract makes, but it doesn't make anywhere near that. And so it's like, how is any of this fair? And it's kind of what is leading to this great, like we said, split or whatever we want to call it of why things like this are happening. So, Nick, looks like you got a Java man watching in there. Scott,
there we go.
Shapiro. So.
Speaking of Michigan too, JR,
yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Your hoodie looks like very close to that.
Okay, I was just it's Kent State.
Yeah, you gotta be careful there.
I know.
Yeah, that color scheme is not the color scheme you should be wearing this week as an Ohio State fan.
My sister goes to Kent State, so I have an excuse.
There we go. The Java men are adopting OSU for the weekend. We are very much on the Michigan hater bandwagon, and it's hard not to be the way that they've acted in this whole scandal. So I'll just throw that out there for the group.
You guys are going to ruin the Ohio against the world stuff.
Is that your guys' thing? That's your guys' thing?
No, that was the thing like in 2014, and then Ryan Day kind of brought it back because he said it at the end of the Notre Dame game when he was yelling at Lou Holtz. But
you guys see Harbaugh today? When they asked him about what his respect level is for Day.
Oh yeah, I posted about it. I said it's and I got a lot of Michigan fans mad when I posted about it.
JR, you're on point with the Twitter game, by the way.
Hey,
I have to compliment you.
I appreciate that.
Agreed.
So another thing I wanted to ask you guys about with this, and Russ, we'll go to you with this first, and Nick, then we'll get your comments. So this new structure they're talking about is how schools can utilize the money, because schools are going to get paid, but they don't want to just give these schools all this money and then them use it in a way that I guess the NCAA or whoever is in charge without the NCAA doesn't see it fit. And so what they're actually talking about in this one of these models is that they would actually put a cap on coaches' salaries and say, coaches can no longer make more than XYZ amount. And that any money earned by like postseason play and stuff like that would have to be spent on education and player health and well-being. So what they describe as that is like mental health stuff, which I think is fantastic. Every school should be operating with those things. And then also like the trainers room, more trainers, stuff like that. So Russ, what are your thoughts on the NCAA or whoever it is, like basically telling schools what they can do with the money?
Well, this is part of the Pandora's box that NIL kind of opened up, that people warned about, that said, you're not going to be able to put the brakes on this. You're not going to be able to keep it under control and under wraps. Like, it's going to get out of control. It's going to get abused, and you're going to have to micromanage the crap out of it eventually. And the other part that could, and this article kind of alluded to it, that could really throw a wrench into things is if the Power 5 conferences, they break apart, that's going to destroy some of the integrity and some of the things that we love about college sports, right? Like, what happens to the March Madness, right? We're going into basketball season. What happens to that? Now is it tainted now? Like, now if a team wins the national championship, is it like, oh, well, it's not really a national championship because now it's only like a pool of 70, 80, 90 schools instead of the 300 plus, But yeah, I mean, it was almost hard to read the way that they get into like, well, this money has to be regulated this way and this, but it's I go back to it's what people, traditionalist old school guys like me that were like, hey, I don't like NIL. It's gonna open this big box of worms, and or a can of worms. That's what's happened.
Right.
So,
what do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ross. I think the NCAA is in total scramble mode, right? I don't think they know what's best because we've never been here before. There's not a playbook, so it's just hard to see what happens from here. I'm very much like you, Russ, with the NIL. I love the fact that players are getting compensated. I think they should. I don't know how you control that. It's just the reality of the situation, but all these things that it's created now is just. It's just tough when you're watching your team and you recruit a 5-star for the first time and your coach benches him because he's not playing defense, and then you immediately know that he's going to transfer the next year, right? Just he's going to go to the next school that offers him playing time and more money. So it's just it's hard to be all the things that we love about college basketball, the loyalty. You love seeing these kids stay at the school for 4 or 5 years and kind of growing with them and watching them develop. You lose a lot of that. So
that's the Purdue way. We grow our guys, we keep them.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, the last, I'm a Buckeye fan, so the last player I can remember that really did that and will be remembered probably as the last guy who really did that was Aaron Kraft. And I'm sure both of you guys have somebody in your program that did that. And when Aaron Kraft did it, it wasn't like it was sad because we knew it was going to be one of the last ones, because we didn't know it was going to be one of the last ones.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, Nick, I'm looking at things now and it's like, like when Chris Holtman started benching Bryce Sensabaugh last year in some of those games, I was like, okay, well, he's either going to go to the NBA or transfer, one of the two. And I really liked Bryce Sensabaugh. I thought he was a good player. And I didn't know what was going to happen this season, too. I didn't know if Felix Okpara was going to come back with Zed Key coming back. I didn't know Bruce Thornton and Ronnie Gale, those kind of guys. And so it is really, really interesting to see, because I agree, I don't like NIL, but I think it's right for the players to be able to make money.
Yeah.
So.
One last thing I want to say, too, is I know we talked about, Pandora's box is opened. Oh no, what's around the corner? Is the NCAA dead? As a fan, don't panic. It's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. There's too much money involved in college sports for them to not figure this thing out and not get a good product on the court or on the field. And even if you're worried about your particular school, right? Like Purdue fans, they kind of panicked a little bit when NIL came out, right? Because it's like, oh man, Painter, especially with basketball, we've relied on these guys that stay for 4 or 5 years, but now if they can transfer and go make money more somewhere else, what's going to happen? The sky's falling. Well, what has Purdue done the last 2 years? Like take out the tournament, obviously, but we were number one in the country for the first time in school history 2 years in a row. So it's not going to completely change, the landscape of college sports. It is and it isn't. You're still going to see a good product. You're still going to see parity. You're still going to see. It's not just going to be 1 or 2 super teams. Like it's still going to be a good product. And if you're watching this, you're a Big Ten fan. So you're definitely fine because the Big Ten is one of the super conferences. So we're good. We're good.
Adapt or die, right, Russ? You got to adapt.
Exactly.
That's the only way.
And there's plenty of rumors out there about some schools won't be able to afford it. And oh my gosh, that Purdue fan is on the screen right now with the gold top hat thing. Sorry, but that's the whole thing, right? That people are talking about is they're saying, who's going to not have the money to be able to do these things? I don't think it's anybody in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is going to have plenty of money to do all these things. I read an article today that was talking about it's going to be the Big 12. It's going to be some of the lower level ACC teams that are going to struggle more with this. And possibly they might be out of the power conferences just because they're not able to afford it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Listen to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.